DAZN. How do you get involved in something like that, and what? Tell me this story. Give me the origin story and what you've learned from it so far.
The origin story, I've known the owner, the guy who's funded most of it for its history, a guy named Len Blavatnik, who's a great promoter of media in general, and he's a great business person. Known him for years. John Skipper was the chairman of DAZN after he left ESPN, and of course, John Skipper and I worked together for 25 years. Almost the whole time I was at Disney, he was at Disney in one capacity or another. And there's a natural connection. And Len needed some strategic guidance for how to, what streamed sports should be. And I think Jimmy Pitaro's coming up here next, and he and I worked together and with Skipper to launch ESPN Plus back when we launched that. So I've had a lot of experience in streaming media. We were friends. John wanted to move on and do something else. He needed a replacement. That was it. That's what I stepped up.
What has surprised you the most about this? I mean, the media world, it's fair to say this is a continuing theme through your life, through this conference, is upside down, disrupted, all of that. You're right in the middle of it in many ways, but through the DAZN experience, what are you learning about sports, how people are consuming it, and how it's distributed?
Well, DAZN is focused mainly in Europe.
Yeah.
We have Japan, where DAZN has a lot of subscribers for baseball and the soccer rights called the J-League in Japan. Baseball is the most popular sport there. We have the major soccer rights in Italy. It's called Serie A. We have all the games of Serie A that are streamed through DAZN. We have Bundesliga rights, which is the big Premier League in Germany, and we have La Liga rights in Spain. We were hoping to get the EPL rights and the Champions League rights in the UK, but we lost that battle for British Telecom Sports Service. So with DAZN, we're really focused in markets outside of the US. We have boxing on a global basis, but really it's about Europe, I would say, the center of gravity. And Europe is substantially different than the US. If you think about how European sports rights have always been packaged and delivered, people have always had to pay extra for sports package. Unlike the US, where ESPN, and you'll hear from Jimmy, he'll give you the whole history about that, ESPN has been packaged with all the other cable channels in a basic bundle, and that basic bundle is therefore quite expensive because of the sports rights. In Europe, you bought an entertainment package, and you separately had to pay for your sports package. So for several decades now, the demand for sports has been quite apparent. We know exactly who wants it, who's willing to pay for it. So when you take it and deliver that same sports package outside of pay TV, but just deliver it over the internet, you already know what the demand is. You know what the price points are. It's a fairly certain bet. Unlike in the US, if ESPN were to go over the top and pull itself out of the cable bundle, who knows what would happen?
Yeah.
You really don't know. But in Europe, it's been sold that way for a long time.
And so does this experience make you more enthusiastic about sports and media going forward? Because as I alluded to earlier, you've got a partnership with Blackstone, you're looking at things all over, and folks in this room and listening may have taken note of the deal you did with Reese Witherspoon. That is obviously a very notable deal. We're dealing with a sports world that is very creator driven as well. So what do you see as you look across that collision, that nexus of sports and media?
Well, I do see the fact that, like every other video programming element, sports is going to be delivered via the internet, on apps, to connected televisions around the world. That's an inexorable march of, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's clear. I think that in the US, people have been paying for sports rights who haven't been using them. And I think that one thing you definitely see these days is a more precision focus on what people are paying for. And it's gotten to the point where people will sign up for Disney Plus or sign up for Netflix for one series, then they'll get off the service. And even though there's a lot of friction in getting on and off, and it's kind of painful to manage that, people are so precise in their buying habits that they're turning on and off apps already. People want to pay for what they're consuming. They're willing to pay a fair price for it, but that's what they want. And so I think you're going to see, as I mentioned, Europe has always had a payment, an extra payment made explicitly for sports. The fans have to affirmatively decide to pay for sports. Here they have not. I think it's inevitable that the same dynamic will happen in the US. It's happened in all forms of entertainment now.
Right.
There's great disaggregation, the unbundling, and the ability to buy what you want to buy and not buy what you don't want to buy.
Right.
And I think that's one of the big shifts of authority from distributors and content owners to consumers. And that shift is completing itself, and you'll see the ramifications of that everywhere.
And so how does that, without giving away your secret sauce, how does that become investable?
Well, look, well, here's how it becomes investable. In the U.S., it seems like sports rights defy gravity.
Yeah.
They go up, and they go up monotonically all the time. They never go down, some exceptions. That's not the case. When Europe, as I described it, people have to pay for sports rights. That's really dampened the upward trajectory of those sports rights, because everyone knows what they're worth. They're worth what people will pay for them, and there's a set of people. 5 million people in the UK pay £30 a month for soccer.
Right.
We know it, and if you look at the sports rights behavior over the last 6 years, it's flat to down in every major European territory for the major sports rights. So that is something that also, once you know what the demand is and once you know what people are going to pay, it also puts kind of a lid on these crazy increases in sports rights. And I think, maybe, I don't know when it will happen, but they can't defy gravity forever, and they haven't in Europe.
All right, let's talk a little bit as time ticks down about the fitness business. You're in it via Beachbody. People thinking about the fitness business right now, especially in connected fitness, are thinking about Peloton and the ride that they have had, as it were, over the last few weeks. What have you learned about that business, which obviously, talk about disruption and COVID and all of those things. Obviously, that has had a profound effect. What have you seen?
It had a profound effect. I will say the one thing that I and many investors misjudged about the fitness industry is the degree to which the reset would be permanent. That post-COVID, when the opening up happened, people will have found so much convenience and so much ease with working out at home that it's very frictionless, that we thought that would be a relatively permanent reset. And all the research showed the same thing. Consumer research is very, very dicey, because you often get a false signal, and the signal there was reset, love working out at home, roll out of bed, walk down to your living room and do a workout. We thought that was going to be a very substantial change in how people exercised. Turned out to be wrong. People are going back to gyms. The reset isn't as either prominent or permanent as we thought, and so you see the in-home fitness taking a big hit because of that.
Yeah.
And I think in a nutshell, that's really what happened.
Right. And so, does it evolve? Does it change? It's hard to say, but what would you do going forward, or what do you do going forward in answer to that?
Yeah, look, you have to just double down on the value proposition. I think Beachbody is a great company. I think it's, I can't give you any, I'm on the board of Beachbody, right. So I can't speak too much about it. But I will say, it has been profitable its entire life, and I believe it just goes back to first principles. Do what you know works. I think maybe market a little less than we had planned to, because you market into growing demand. Marketing into a flattish or less growth in demand than you thought is wasteful.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of a rejiggering of the P&L, of the investments that are being made. The other thing that didn't help, by the way, there's a perfect storm of this reset not being quite as profound as we thought, but also the inability to target ads in social media. The profound change that happened with Apple and your ability to use identifiers to target advertising really made acquisition costs skyrocket. Digital media is how you get these subscribers. Peloton, Beachbody, any direct-to-consumer service. Those customer acquisition costs have increased quite dramatically because of the change in ad targeting. So I think that, coupled with this reset, made the economics somewhat challenging. So go back to basics, do what you know how to do. Beachbody benefits from the fact they have over 400,000 coaches that are influencers, and they help sell the product, both the nutrition and the online product, and get back to that, get back to basics, and get back to what works.
We're going to hear, as you mentioned, from Jimmy and from George Pine in a few minutes. But as we think about streaming and behavior, you mentioned, which I think is absolutely true, this inexorable march toward a completely different way of consuming. You've seen that up close and personal. So what is that? Is that just an ever-evolving thing? Does it have an end? What's the lesson to be taken from that march?
I think the overarching lesson that I learned at Disney, then briefly at TikTok, and now all the different endeavors that I'm doing, is that technology enables different. It really does empower the consumer. It sounds almost trite at this point to say it, but it's trite because it's true. There's a real authority that consumers now have in how they spend their time, what they engage with, and there's a multiplicity of different avenues for them to enjoy themselves. There's podcasts, there's streaming music, there's short form video like on TikTok and on Instagram now and on Facebook where it's evolving, and on Twitch. And there's esports, to mention Twitch. There's such a diversity of entertainment options that really speak to people's, pretty narrow affinities often. Yeah. And that's one of the promises of the internet, is it allows programming to take hold that you couldn't kind of contemplate before. So it's going to be, there's going to be a massive evolution. It's not ending. Consumers will always find new platforms and new video to engage with. And that's the thing. It's not really competition among traditional media companies or new media companies. It's competition with video games, with a TikTok, with all sorts of things and ways people spend their time that you couldn't have contemplated 5 or 10 years ago. Who could have contemplated TikTok with the artificial intelligence and the unbelievable immersion that you get in that app? Couldn't have predicted that 10 years ago. And the march of technology continues unpredictably, but it will cause ongoing fractionalization of people's time and attention. And that's a challenge. It's a challenge for sports.
Yeah.
That is a big challenge for sports because people are used to fast snippets now. If you think about how they've been trained, that would lead you towards thinking that highlights are becoming more valuable and the long form games themselves maybe less so.
Right.
And I think you see that a little bit in the younger people.
We see it in baseball. Right. I mean, you see the numbers don't lie when it comes to how people are consuming baseball and the product and all of those things. All right. So minute and a half left. What's the piece of wisdom to the business audience watching right now? Especially because I feel like, we don't know each other that well. Seem like you're living your best life. Like you've got, all these different things going on. Like what's your advice, having worked at big companies, startups, investing, like, especially when it comes to this sports and business arena? What's your advice?
Well, I always followed my gut pretty. I kind of had a decent intuition about what would happen. I mean, at Disney, Jimmy and I did it together, and John Skipper. But knowing that we needed to launch a direct-to-consumer service or multiple direct-to-consumer services was crucial. Knowing that we didn't want to bundle everything together. You don't want to make people buy stuff together. That was a kind of an intuitive conclusion that I and Bob Iger and others came to at Disney. And I think just trust that. And the more experienced you are, the more developed your intuition is. So I'm an engineer by training, so it's hard for me to say this, but not everything yields to really complex and deep analysis. Sometimes when you've seen situations and you have sort of pattern recognition, go with your intuition and don't be afraid to lean into that. Also, don't be afraid of change. I was at Disney for 27 years, I was at TikTok for 3 months, and I was at, now I'm doing what I'm doing. As you said, it's best life. I've never enjoyed myself more, so don't be afraid.
Yeah, all right.
Don't operate out of fear, key thing.
Good. Well, good to spend some time with you. Thank you. Lots of wisdom packed into a very short amount of time.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Pleasure.
Good to see you.
Thanks.
All right.